And good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Monday, the 22nd August in 2022. Well, right here in Brisbane, it's just a wonderful, amazing day today, and 15 degrees and sunny right at the moment. It's looking glorious out there today. Well, today, what do we have for you? We have lined up for you all our latest news update, plus we have the Daily India report, and of course, we'll be finishing off with our functions and events. And what a mega weekend this has been. So many functions and events that took place. Well, Brisbane has just been rife with so many functions and activities. But I must say that Krishna Janmashtami by ISKCON Brisbane was just amazing. You could not believe the number of people that turned out there. As we were leaving, there were still cars lined up in streets 2, 3, 4 streets away. And it was a bit touching scene to see all the small kids walking with their parents to make their way to the main venue, because the parking within the venue and the surrounds were already taken. So there were so many people, but it was very well organized. Different section, kids section, a special different langar section where the food was being served, and the top hall main where the functions were taking place, pravachans were taking place, speeches were happening. We, as the chief guest, were really looked after, and the honor that was bestowed upon us by ISKCON was just heartwarming and humbling. The second event that I talk about would be the Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan concert by Infusion Band. And amazing, once again, we were the guest of honor, the chief guest at that function as well. And once again, very well organized. Everyone just loved the performances, the musicians, the singers, everyone just did a wonderful job. Such good reviews. And it is good to see the standard of our stage performances right here in Brisbane, which is now beautifully, very well present. Well, making news, and it will stay around for a while until we get to the bottom of this, is our ex-Prime Minister and the different portfolios that he took on. Here's what former Deputy Prime Minister had to say.
No, don't verbal me, stop that.
The former Deputy Prime Minister...
What else are you looking for? Archangel Gabriel was holding his hand. What do you want?
Attempts to clear the air on what he knew and when.
He never said to me, I was the Minister for Resources.
The Honourable Keith Pitt MP as Minister for Resources.
Revelations of Scott Morrison's clandestine co-opting of the Resources Ministry, which he used to block a controversial offshore gas project in New South Wales, have infuriated the junior coalition partner. But Barnaby Joyce insists he couldn't pursue the matter while Nationals leader because the Prime Minister would have punished the party.
The Prime Minister's solution to me, if I'd pursued this, was quite simple. He would have the portfolio back and we'd lose all power.
On Monday, a highly anticipated report into Scott Morrison's ministerial manoeuvring will be handed to Anthony Albanese.
What the Solicitor General will advise on is, of course, the legal issues. There's separate questions about the functioning of our democracy, about conventions.
The government signalling it's likely to launch a broader inquiry and possibly parliamentary punishment of the now Liberal backbencher.
We then have to look about whether the rules of the Parliament were broken.
Labor has expressed confidence in the Governor-General over his role in rubber-stamping Scott Morrison's secret portfolios. But questions remain about whether the retired General David Hurley raised any concerns about the unusual arrangements and why he didn't demand they be made public. Andrew Green, ABC News.
And that is the point, that these were not made public. Well, of course, the Scott Morrison at that time would have had his reasons, but the Governor-General as well. So, is it the Governor-General's role to make all these things public, or he just goes on about his business and it's the government's policy and the media advisors who are supposed to make this public? Well, we will see as this transpires, and we'll see what happens. Well, right now, government is going to shut down 8 disability employment services.
Sam Payor and her son Ben are a strong team. Ben works with Ms Payor's education training business, The Growing Space, which only employs people with disabilities and their carers. But using disability employment services to find employees hasn't always been easy.
We've had some services that just didn't provide any service. They just kind of dumped people. Also didn't support us, didn't support the person with disability at all.
A review into the sector in the wake of the Disability Royal Commission has found half of the country's disability employment services aren't up to scratch.
People with a disability have only been put into short-term employment. When the government subsidies end, they no longer have a job.
The federal government defunding 8 service providers today who have failed to provide adequate employment support.
Have not been delivering real job outcomes. They've been regularly, on an ongoing basis, not providing the service that's required, and that's why we're discontinuing them.
I think this has been a long time coming. There are a lot of providers that have been doing a lousy job for a very long time.
The government says one provider, which manages about 650 clients and received up to $900,000 in federal government funding in 2021, only placed 6 people in a job that lasted under a year and 1 person in a job that lasted over a year.
The decision will affect 15,500 people.
So we will be able to very confidently transition those people to other services near where they live.
The government will waive any requirements to seek work to earn disability support payments as the transition occurs. Evelyn Leckie, ABC News.
So there you go, service providers versus the government. Well, to me, this should be a government thing. The government should look after the disability sector there, and rather than just offshoring that to service providers who might or who might not do a good job. And of course, those service providers cannot operate without the fundings. So again, it is that situation. Well, right now let's look at the New South Wales budget, which is set to bring in fresh scrutiny.
Below the surface, all is not well in Sydney Harbour. The fish, seahorses and seals. Now the government has promised improvements.
We're today beginning a $9.1 million initiative that will see us restore beautiful Sydney Harbour.
Restoration, a theme for the government.
What we need to do is ensure that the policies that we're putting in place deal with the fundamental and most significant challenges that are in front of us.
But the past is continuing to plague the Perrottet government, and it's about to come under increased scrutiny over the next 2.5 weeks. Budget estimates begins tomorrow.
It is time for Mr Perrottet, Mr Keane and the other senior leaders of the government to answer questions in the Parliament, and this is the forum in which the ministers will be held to account.
It'll be the first time they'll be questioned under oath about the John Barilaro New York trade controversy. There are also concerns about possible government intervention in the appointment of Stephen Cartwright as the Agent General in London. Briefing notes signed by the then Treasurer Dominic Perrottet and the Deputy Premier John Barilaro say the interview panel endorsed him as the preferred candidate on 30th March 2021. That's the same day he was interviewed, when the opposition says there were further checks to do.
The documents show that the fix was always in. Mr Cartwright was going to get the job regardless of whether or not he was going to pass all the assessments.
For a government that's been in turmoil for weeks, things could get worse. Liberal Party pre-selections are also starting ahead of the March election. Nominations for more than a dozen seats close tomorrow. And in some areas, factional fights are already brewing.
Fights are already brewing. So, just ahead of the budget week, well, we'll have to keep an eye on that situation and see what transpires out of that. Right now, our next report looks at DNA screening, now that it's available for young Australians.
A small kit that could save lives. This is the world's first preventative DNA screening test, and it's been developed in Australia,
where we're offering testing for high-risk conditions that are called medically actionable. And this means that there's a genetic high risk, but there's something we can do about it.
As part of the pilot program, 10,000 free genetic tests are available for anyone aged 18 to 40.
We will post a DNA saliva kit to their home, so they can spit in that tube from the comfort of their home and post it back to us completely free.
Eve was diagnosed with Lynch syndrome when she was just 16. She says early prevention is key.
It's the difference between someone saying
Prevention is key, as of course we know that, and that is very good to see that these tests are now available, as was mentioned in the report, that if diagnosed very early in the process, cure can be forthcoming. Right now, let's go to Darwin, where a fire causes $30 million worth of damage.
Smoke billowing and flames raging. This anti-health storage facility was already engulfed by fire by the time crews arrived. It began just after 10 o'clock this morning, but firefighters managed to prevent it from spreading to nearby properties.
We had 28 firefighters assigned to this incident. We had the Bronto, which is the 44-metre ladder. We had pumpers from Darwin Station, Marara Station and Berrima Station.
But the firefighters aren't the only ones who felt the impact of the blaze. The warehouse supplies hospitals across the Top End region, including Royal Darwin Hospital, as well as those in Palmerston, Katherine and Gove. The Anti-Health Department declaring a rare code brown emergency, called only when there's an external incident that requires a system-wide response, such as a transport accident, chemical spill, natural disaster or mass casualty event.
My understanding is that the warehouse that was burnt basically contained pretty much all the disposable stuff that the hospital needs, such as syringes, swabs and the like.
In a statement, Anti-Health said it will conduct a stock take to determine the level of medical supplies available for patient care.
Today's severe fire weather danger hasn't made things any easier for firefighters working to contain this blaze. The wind today has intensified these flames, and as you can see, it's led to a huge column of smoke spreading over Darwin.
The initial estimates come in at about $30 million. It was a health storage facility, but that's early stages yet.
It's expected the building will continue to burn for several days before fire investigators are able to determine the cause of the inferno. Mitchell Abram, ABC News.
Well, so much for the environment protection up north. Well, if you can see those thick, heavy smoke billowing into the atmosphere. Well, it's not exactly carbon or coal. Well, right now, let's go to Fremantle, where there is a traffic bridge which could be demolished.
Built in 1939, it was meant to be a temporary connection into the port city, but lasted longer than anyone imagined. Final design plans for its replacement were unveiled today, with 2 bridges to take its place, one for traffic, the other for trains.
The benefit will not only flow to the commuters in cars, but pedestrians, people walking, public transport, freight capacity.
The $280 million design will see the realignment of Canning Highway to create a direct connection into waterfront precincts. But it will also see the heritage-listed Fremantle Traffic Bridge demolished. Over the years, governments put tens of millions of dollars into keeping the timber bridge operational.
As you can see, it is in its final days. There's been a lot of work already. We've seen a lot of reinforcement, concrete reinforcement already.
But say it's time to let it go. Almost 10,000 people have signed a petition to repurpose the bridge as a community space.
And we want it repurposed, just like the Busselton Jetty. You know, the Busselton Jetty was fixed up, it was handed to a community group, they run it, they make money, so we want the same thing here.
This bridge was designed to be used for 40 years. It's now been around for more than 80 years, and Fremantle locals are hoping it'll stick around as a heritage site. But according to the state government's plans, that doesn't seem likely.
The government says it's working with the Heritage Council to see what parts of the bridge can be preserved. Kason Ho, ABC News.
Well, do we preserve that as a nature, or does it pose a lot of threat and safety issues there as well? So it's a balancing act. Well, right now, homeowners are left in limbo over a stalled tunnel project. Here's that report.
For more than 2 decades, Geopilas has lived with uncertainty.
We received one of the first letters that there was going to be a redevelopment of the road 10 years before my father died. He passed 11 years ago, so it's 21 years. He had said to us, I don't care what happens because I'll be dead then.
But the Mile End resident wants to get on with her life and even renovate her South Road home. Yet she still doesn't know if the property she's lived in since she was 1 will be acquired as part of the final stage of the North-South corridor. Several of her fed-up neighbours are selling up and moving on.
Stagnation, that's what I call it, and stagnation is not a good feeling, it's rotten.
This project had been given the tick of approval from Infrastructure Australia. It was shovel ready and ready to move to the next stage.
The state opposition is calling on the government to release the review it ordered when it came to power, claiming the project was far from shovel ready. It's been 2 months since the minister said that review would be completed within weeks.
I can't give you a time frame because there's not a political deadline here, there's an engineering deadline. We've got to get this right.
Then there's the cost. The government says it will be higher than the $9.9 billion the former government costed, but wouldn't be drawn on the final figure, the design or how many more homes would need to be acquired.
For our freight industry, for our productivity and for our general well-being, if we don't have a major motorway, Adelaide will grind to a halt.
Residents and business owners agree, but their message is clear.
Just make a decision.
The government promises work will begin in this term of government. Claire Campbell, ABC News.
Well, there we go. Well, just make a decision either way, but it's often not as easy as that. So, well, ladies and gentlemen, right now it's time to go to our daily India report.
Welcome to the Daily India Report that brings you reports, interviews, features and more on India and the Indian diaspora. Indian National Security Advisor is in Russia for strategic discussions. After important talks with his counterpart, the Indian NSA met with Russian Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov. Russian Deputy Prime Minister Denis Manturov met with Indian National Security Advisor Ajit Doval on 18th August and discussed bilateral trade and economic ties as well as the peaceful use of outer space. Manturov, who is also Minister of Industry and Trade, participated as chair of the Russian side of the Intergovernmental Russian-Indian Commission for Trade, Economic, Scientific, Technological and Cultural Cooperation. He emphasized improving bilateral relations across the board. Earlier, Doval met his Russian counterpart Nikolai Patrushev in Moscow on Wednesday and held discussions on a wide range of bilateral and international issues. This visit comes as India continues to engage with Russia on a number of issues, including India's energy security amid the Ukraine conflict. Doval's Russia visit is significant as it comes against the backdrop of Russian conflict with Ukraine. A US media report recently said Russia surpassed Saudi Arabia in June to become the second biggest supplier of crude to India. New Delhi has maintained that its oil import from Moscow will be guided by its energy security needs. United States Senator Jon Ossoff from Georgia is embarking on an 8-day visit to India, saying his agenda is to improve bilateral relations. A US delegation led by Senator Jon Ossoff is set to visit India for 8 days starting August 30th to explore ways to improve mutually beneficial commercial, scientific and security relations between the two countries. The 35-year-old Georgia leader Ossoff is the youngest senator to be elected in the United States in 3 decades. In a media statement, he said that his visit will be focused on improving relations and on meeting young political leaders. He also spoke about providing adequate representation to the Indian American community in Georgia. The visit will start off in Mumbai city and would end in the national capital, New Delhi. This week, Senator Ossoff sent a message to Indian people on the occasion of the 75th anniversary of India's independence, highlighting the importance of deepening ties between the two countries. Indian devotees across the world are celebrating Lord Krishna's birthday, Janmashtami. Indians and the Indian diaspora marked celebrations with visits to famous temples, decorating homes and locations. Temples, priests, devotees prepared with fervour across India and the world to celebrate Krishna Janmashtami on 19th August 2022. Devotees were seen flocking to temples, especially the renowned temple in Mathura city in Uttar Pradesh where Lord Krishna was born. Janmashtami celebrations began on 18th August evening. Large processions marked the celebrations. Janmashtami marks the birth anniversary of Lord Krishna. Believers observe the day by keeping a fast and praying at the temples. As per the Hindu calendar, Lord Krishna, an avatar of Lord Vishnu, was born on the 8th day of the month of Bhadra. The day mostly falls in August or September. India's President Draupadi Murmu greeted Indians on the eve of Janmashtami, saying Krishna's life and teachings inspire to follow the path of virtue in our thoughts, words and actions. In an interaction with police chiefs of border states, Indian Home Minister Amit Shah asked them to beef up security to ensure safety of citizens. Indian Home Minister Amit Shah on August 18th asked the police chiefs of border states to keep a strict vigil on demographic changes and radicalization in border districts. He said the soon-to-be launched 5G technology should be used to strengthen the security system, and a presentation was made on emerging challenges around the technology. Shah addressed over 600 police officers on the second day of the National Security Strategies Conference organized by the Intelligence Bureau. Shah said that the Director General of Police and border states should ensure that technological and strategic information percolates down the police hierarchy. Leaders of Indian opposition parties in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir have criticized the move by local civic authorities to allow non-residents to have the right to vote during elections. Opposition leaders, including former chief ministers of Jammu and Kashmir, flayed the move by the Election Commission officer to allow voting rights to the non-locals. People's Democratic Party head Mehbooba Mufti wrote on Twitter, quote, "Government of India's decision to defer polls in Jammu and Kashmir, preceded by egregious gerrymandering tilting the balance in BJP's favour and now allowing non-locals to vote is obviously to influence election results. The real aim is to continue ruling Jammu and Kashmir with an iron fist to disempower locals." End quote. In a major decision on August 18th, Jammu and Kashmir's Chief Electoral Officer Hirdesh Kumar announced that non-locals, including employees, students, labourers or anyone from outside who is living ordinarily in Jammu and Kashmir can register their names in the voting list and vote in the Jammu and Kashmir elections. He said that the requirement of domicile is not necessary for outsiders to get enlisted as voters. He has also said that armed forces personnel from other states who are posted at peace stations in Jammu and Kashmir can also get their names added to the voter list. India's Central Bureau of Investigation officials have raided the residence of Delhi State's Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia following accusations of corruption against him. Over 20 locations in Delhi State and its adjoining areas, including the residence of Delhi Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia, were searched on August 19th by the Central Bureau of Investigation. The probe agency had searched Manish Sisodia's home over allegations of corruption in the Delhi excise policy. Delhi Chief Minister and Aam Aadmi Party National Convener Arvind Kejriwal said that the probe agency officials did not find anything against his government during the earlier searches and nothing will come out this time as well. The CBI has registered a first information report in connection with alleged irregularities in the formulation and execution of the Delhi excise policy introduced in November 2021. India registers a massive win in a spectacular match against Zimbabwe on August 18th. This was the first match of the ongoing ODI series. Deepak Chahar bowled an incisive opening spell before Shikhar Dhawan and Shubman Gill hit half centuries to power India to a clinical 10-wicket win. It was the record 9th wicket stand of 70 runs between Brad Evans and Richard Nakarawa that took Zimbabwe close to the 200-run mark. In response, Dhawan and Gill put up a 192-run partnership to help India get past the finish line in just 30.5 overs. Dhawan scored 81 from 113 balls and Gill a more brutal 82 from 72 deliveries. In bowling, it didn't take long for Chahar to find his rhythm on a Harare Sports Club track and offered some help. Earlier, Rahul, who made a comeback after a nearly 3-month layoff due to a sports hernia and COVID-19, won the toss and elected to bowl. Rahul took the captaincy reins in Rohit Sharma's absence, with India in good ODI form after winning 5 of their last 6 matches. Chahar also returned to the 11 after recovering from a hamstring injury that he sustained back in February this year. Praises pour in for actors Dulquer Salmaan, Rashmika Mandanna and Mrunal Thakur's film Sita Ramam. The film revolves around a war love story between two people played by the actors. Top Bollywood stars and former Vice President of India Venkaiah Naidu showered praises on the film Sita Ramam, played by Dulquer Salmaan and Rashmika Mandanna. This film was released on August 5th and has received a tremendous response. It has also received critical acclaim for the performances by lead stars. Anushka Shetty took to Instagram to give a shout-out to Dulquer's second Telugu movie after the Kirti Suresh-led Mahanati. Sita Ramam is a period romantic drama directed by Hanu Raghavapudi. This is Dulquer Salmaan's first Telugu movie in 4 years and has exceeded expectations at the box office. Celebrities and critics alike have given it the thumbs up. Taking to Twitter, Naidu wrote in Telugu, quote, "Watch the movie Sita Ramam. With the coordination of the actors and technical departments, a beautiful scene unfolded. Unlike a simple love story with a heroic soldier background added to it, this film unleashes a range of emotions and is a must-watch for everyone." End quote.
నేనింకా అనాథని కాదు కదా.
That's all in today's bulletin.
And thank you very much for that news update, Anupriya. Well, right now it's time to go to our functions and events. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have for you in this morning segment. And it's been wonderful having your company here on the 22nd day of August in Brisbane, where the temperature is now 16 degrees and sunny, and it is predicted to get up to 21 degrees, a wonderful time of the year. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, until tomorrow, it's goodbye from us.